Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom on Collaboration. It's your indie spotlight for the week of March 5th, 2025. This is your 7-day warning, everybody. You have 7 days until my birthday, so get that gift in the mail. You want to send it over. I'm still looking for an Amazing Spider-Man number 50, so if any of our wonderful listeners out there have a copy to spare, just hanging out.
What is that? First appearance Kingpin, right?
First appearance of Kingpin, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been looking. That's one of the.
Speaking of which, first Daredevil Born Again, I think it premieres tonight, didn't it? Or
yesterday. I've heard good things. Yeah. Haven't watched. I mean, I'm still like when you go. If you go on Disney Plus and you look at they have different various ways to watch it, and there's one that's like the MCU complete timeline, and I started doing that like toward the end of last year. Watched everything. I got up to the point where I think I watched the first two Guardians, and the next thing on there is Groot, which I think is an animated series. I haven't watched anything in months, so I haven't really wanted to watch. And I could just skip it, but the completist in me is like, nah, I should watch it. But yeah, we're totally off tangent here. But nah, the only thing I watched recently, I got the screeners. It's out now. Well, I don't think the whole thing is out, but when you get the screeners, they send you the whole season. So I saw Reacher season 3. Watched that with my wife. That
halfway done that,
yeah, that was great. And then we went to look at something on one of the episodes the other day, and I realized, oh wait, the whole thing's not out, so I had to go back and it's this is like total, like it couldn't get more first world problems, like if you tried, but to watch the screeners is like you have to jump through all these hoops because they want to make sure that you don't share them with everybody. So they send you the email that says, hey, these screeners for this show that's coming, in a month or 2 months or whatever it is. Yeah, I just got one for something called, I think it's called the Bounty, the Bount Man or something like that, the Bounty Man, the Bondsman. That's what it's called, the Bondsman. It's got Kevin Bacon, yes. And he's like he dies. He's a bounty hunter. He dies, goes to hell. They send him back to hunt down demons. But anyway, so you get this email. Like I got this email for the Bondsman, and it's like there's a link in there that says watch now. So you click the watch now, and then it takes you to another web page, and you have to link your phone to your account, and it gives you a code that changes like every, 15 seconds or 30 seconds. Then you enter the code, and then you hit watch now, and then it sends you wait, I got that backwards. It sends you a link first, and you put in your password, and click watch now, and then it sends you another email with what's called a magic link, and then you click on the magic link, and it opens another web page, and that's where you have to go put in the 6-digit code that rotates every 30 seconds, and you click on that, and then it actually loads into the page that has all the episodes. But you have to use the exact same browser window that your emails open on. You can't like do a different browser window, and I couldn't get my email here and hit and then send you the link because you'd be on a different computer or whatever. So they make you jump through a lot of hoops or whatever. It's no big deal, but and I get it. They're trying to protect people from pirating it and seeing it all on some site before ahead of time, and also while you're watching it. It's got a big watermark with your email address on there. So if it does get leaked out, they know exactly who leaked it because it's got your email on. I mean, I suppose you could try to say, my email got hacked or whatever. But anyway, yeah, Daredevil Born Again. I definitely need to watch it. I'm probably hosting a Daredevil panel at Phoenix Fan Fusion this year. I'm already hosting, I think, 3 other panels. A Ghost Machine panel, an X-Men panel, and a guide to beginner's guide to collecting comics panel, and then possibly so I should watch the show because I'm sure it'll come up. It is a version. The Daredevil panel because Zdarsky is going to be there, and Kevin Smith's going to be there. So it's basically the panel's going to be Born Again and the way Born Again influenced the Zdarsky run and the Guardian Devil run that Kevin Smith did. It's going to kind of be an amalgamation of all 3. So. Anyway, enough Marvel talk. Independent week. There's only 6 books that we're going to talk about in detail here. We'll give a rundown at the end of some other titles that we might want to be on the lookout for. You head down to your local comic shop today. I get it. Things are like super up in the air. Even my shop has only in the last, I'd say about 3 weeks, been affected by all the shenanigans with Diamond. Last week I think their shipment didn't came in almost a week late. All the Diamond stuff, and then today when I went in this morning, because we're recording this on Wednesday, the Diamond's delivery for today was going to be there later in the day, but yeah, I mean, nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. There's rumors that Universal Distribution is going to buy them. I think that would be best case scenario, but um, yeah. So anyway, I say that to say, hopefully you can get down to your comic shop, pre-order some books, and pick up the stuff. I mean, if you pre-order it, they're going to order it. It's going to be, before things go to print, which is another thing I always talk about. Hey, not only does it help out your shop so they know what you want. It helps out the creative team because it boosts sales, but it helps you out because you're not going to miss out if something is a really limited print run. Hey, I pre-ordered it. I'm going to get it. May take a little longer because of Diamond these days, but you should get it eventually. So anyway, yeah, I thought it was, even though only 6 books this week, every one of them was really great. I even read Sam and Twitch because hearing you talk about the last couple issues and talking to Thomas Healy about the Black Ritual Book of Nyx that's coming got me excited about Sam and Twitch, and I read the first issue and then I kind of fell off and I hadn't been reading it even though I've been buying it. But hearing you talk about it, I think 2 issues ago I kind of flipped through it. Last issue I read the whole thing. This issue I read the whole thing. Yeah, it's a good example of this is one of those books you can kind of jump on at any time, and I think they do a good job of sort of making it new reader friendly. Making you able to jump on and kind of hit the ground running and figure out what's going on. So,
Yeah.
How do you feel about the week?
I thought it was really good. I thought it was really good. And again, it's same old. I know we sound like broken records all the time, but great day to collect. Great time to collect comics. Hopefully, the economic shenanigans between our respective countries,
Yeah,
me being Canadian and you American, hopefully we won't have tariffs affecting the price of our comic books because God love them, they're really good, and it was a great indie week.
yeah. You don't live close enough to the border to drive across and then smuggle them back.
Not really. Well, it's a couple hour drive. It'd be about 3 hour, 3.5 hour
Yeah,
drive there and back.
that's probably
But,
not. You'd have to, yeah, maybe get a big group
yeah.
of guys together, and then it's a little more suspicious. So, anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the first book on our list that we're going to talk about, everybody. It's the finale of Exit City from Mad Cave Studios, written by Mark London. Art for the first few pages by the late Carl Mostert. This was kind of the last work he did before he unfortunately passed away. Ramon Villalobos, whose art style is very similar to Kyle Mostert, handles the art on most of the issue. I think he's a good choice again because his art style is kind of similar to Carl's. Like if somebody had asked me whose art does Carl remind you of most, or whose art does Ramon's remind you of, I definitely would have said each other. David Barron handles the colors, Dave Sharp on letters. So we found out last issue we kind of got the origin of God, how come I can't remember? McCormick, right? Detective McCormick.
McCormick,
Blink
yeah.
on his main
Yeah.
name for a second. We found out that the little vials of paint that he was talking to in his pocket was really just himself. He was talking to himself. He's been experimented on. His brain has the ability to process. It's like almost like his brain is divided into 4 brains, and so like he's so much more advanced, right? Like if you had the computing power and your brain could do 4 different things, or you had 4 brains that were linked together, networked together, to use a computer term, it would be more powerful. To be able to process more information because you could look at things from different perspectives. And so that's why he thought he had these 3 other people talking to him. He had himself, 1 brain, and then each of the 3 colors, red, yellow, blue, he thought was a brain, and looking at things from a different angle. And it was all him. It was all his brain. So really interesting concept from Mark London. But now that he finds out, all the pieces sort of fall into place. This issue does a good job of wrapping things up and kind of as McCormick and Miller sort of bounce these events off each other and saying, okay, so this meant this, and then this happened, and then this. So it's a good way to to kind of spoon feed us the story or explain what happened, these murders and what have you, without it being like just one person looking at the camera info dump. So that worked out really well. And the other thing that's great about it, Mark Lennon choosing to do it this way, is that as they're kind of bouncing these ideas off and sort of explaining and figuring out what happened, they get to inject these little one-liners they throw in there, which gives a little bit of their personality. So once they do that, they McCormick talks about the other person that was experimented on, who was the one that was out there doing this killing, and it turns out they were revenge killings for what was done to him because he was experimented on just like McCormick. But unlike McCormick, you can tell, right? Like McCormick can pass as just a regular person. But this guy, Captain Cromwell, I mean, just look at him. He's not going to pass for anything. He's going to just walk down the street or go get a cup of coffee or whatever. But it's a little brutal what McCormick does, and it's interesting because he's sort of taken a page out of Miller's book, and he says as much. Miller being the one that's a little more willing to bend the rules. She's a little bit more the ends justify the means, and he's always been by the book. But now that he's sort of come to this realization that he's been taken advantage of and experimented on and what have you, he just points Captain Cromwell here as a weapon at the guys that were responsible for it, both in terms of the guys that ran this company as well as the corrupt governor of Exit City as well. But then covering his bases to make sure that nothing comes back on him and nobody will know about the fact that he was experimented on. Brutal here. He shoots Captain Cromwell in the eye and kills him. And in a way, I guess, he's justifying it as, this guy's never going to have a peaceful existence. I mean, just look at him. So better off if I just take him out. And then he has that conversation with Miller, like, isn't this what you would have done? Because she's like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that or whatever. And he's like, oh, I learned it from you. And she's like, okay, fair. So again, we get some characterization. They come to an understanding. And it definitely feels like this is the start of an interesting partnership. Definitely could be more to the story. And kind of on that note, there's a couple of epilogues here that sort of lead into the Endless Night crossover or hint at the Endless Night crossover that's coming this summer from Mad Cave that's going to tie these 3 Underworld titles together. This one, Exit City, the Revolution 9, and the Hour of the Wolf. So we get a chance to see this girl here who references Revolution 9 and what they're up to and what have you. And then in Epilogue 2, we even see the guy from Hour of the Wolf. Can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's like, what am I supposed to, what am I doing here? What have you? So it's going to be interesting to see how that all ties together. So I did appreciate that. And I think the last issue of Revolution 9 got delayed, unfortunately, because this definitely feels like this is supposed to be the final issue before the Endless Night, final issue of any Underworld Universe series before the crossover, because that's why these epilogues are here. So, not that it's going to matter that much for the actual story that we got in Revolution 9, but I do think it would have. It's unfortunate that Revolution 9 got delayed, because I want to finish reading number 1 and number 2. Yeah, you kind of wanted these 2 epilogues leading directly into the crossover. So, yeah, we'll see how that crossover goes down. We'll see if any of these series continue with the second volume later on. But I did enjoy it, mostly for the dynamic between Miller and McCormick. They're definitely an odd couple, but Mark Lennon did a good job of making it work. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree, and I will say that I hope I'll definitely check out Endless Night. I'm kind of curious about it. It's a very odd and eclectic array of sort of good guys or characters to put together here. I would not. They don't seem like they would be like necessarily an easy fit on the surface, given the very different nature of the comic books. So I am curious about that. Hopefully there'll be we'll get a synopsis at the beginning of Endless Night in terms of a breakdown of all the characters especially for new readers. But on this comic, Exit City, Colin Marstart, which is they have a wonderful tribute on the final page. The series is dedicated to him who left us far too early, a pioneering creator, loving family man, and all-around great guy. Mad Cave will miss him dearly, and of course, so will us fans. Going out with a bang, so to speak, with really a fantastic art. I enjoy the fact that McCormick is a character that manages. I love the misdirection. At first, we thought that he was the four colors that he sort of manipulated. The four paints were representing different personalities, controlling his mind, or maybe having some impact. But that in fact his mind is more. It's actually more compartmentalized than everything else. And I actually find it interesting that maybe McCormick. You mentioned how he was a little bit. He was kind of cold-hearted, what he did with Captain Cromwell there, using him and then killing him. One can understand that from a pragmatic point of view, but that's quite an about shift to go from a moralistic cop to being very cold-heartedly pragmatic and then using lethal force. I wonder if that is a byproduct of perhaps his of the compartmentalization of his mind. But in any event, it's very much a nice fit with Detective Miller. They are, while they are an odd couple, I think they're coming around where they probably have more in common now than anything. I like it. I really like Exit City. And Revolution 9 comes in second for me. Exit City is probably my first out of all of them. I would love to see a sequel to Exit City, more so than maybe necessarily seeing a sequel or a crossover with all of them. That's my own sort of bias. But I thought this was very well done, and the art was great. And God bless. Condolences to Carl Malstart's family.
Yeah, I agree. I think Exit City is the best of the three, but I mean Revolution 9. It's really great as well. The Hour of the Wolf was the one for me that was just okay. It wasn't bad, but it didn't stand out. It didn't have really cool moments. I just didn't enjoy it as much as Exit City and Revolution 9. Mostly for Revolution 9, it's Violet, right? Like or Velveteen rather. She's just such a great character that doesn't put up with anybody's crap. And so that's kind of what I love about that. But just in terms of pure story, I think Exit City is probably my favorite. So, all right. Up next from our friends over at Ghost Machine, we have the next issue of Hyde Street. This, let me get it up on the screen first, and then I'll start talking about credits. So, written by Jeff Johns, he and artist Ivan Reis are listed as storytellers. Inks by Danny Mickey, colors by Brad Anderson, letters by Rob Lee. Right there on the front, Matinee Monster. We see him here on the cover, and this is definitely a different sort of resident as the members of, or the denizens, we'll call them, of Hyde Street. Doesn't really play the game. So give us your thoughts on this one, Rocky.
I love the central conceit of Hyde Street is that all the people that end up on Hyde Street, basically they're in a contest with the scorekeeper. They got to collect 10,000 souls, and then basically they can escape. So it's sort of the assumption, the blind assumption that I think most readers took, at least in the initial early issues of Hyde Street, was that all of the characters of Hyde Street might have their own idiosyncrasies of character, but ultimately their goal is the same: to try to recruit as many souls and into Hyde Street as they possibly can. And what I love what Jeff Johns has done here with fantastic art by Ivan Reis is this is the story of a Frankenstein monster, but imbuing it with the type of sympathies and idiosyncrasies of character that were associated with Frankenstein. Frankenstein, while a horror creature, a horror of a man. If you look at the traditional Frankenstein story by Mary Shelley, he had a soft side. Well, this is also sort of like a Frankenstein story, but it's grounded in an actor who basically has a desire to be. He wants to be a Hollywood actor. His name is Oscar Oddman, and he ends up getting finally making a big break for a big role of his lifetime anyway in a Frankenstein movie, and out of a twist of through a series of unfortunate circumstances, there's a stand-in actor that is used, and through a misunderstanding, he ends up accidentally killing this stand-in actor. and it's covered up by the studios, and he basically gets away with it, but he feels guilty about it. And of course, the people of Hyde Street, the powers that be on Hyde Street, are aware of it. And of course, he becomes a member of Hyde Street. He's got to start collecting 10,000 souls, but he betrays it. His good nature is such that one of the first souls he has to collect is that of a young girl, and he refuses to do so. And not only does he refuse to do so, but he's punished for doing so. He's an actor, and actors utilize expressions of their face, and they have to speak, and his nails are put through his eyes, and his mouth his voice is taken away, and he becomes this creature, this odd man of Hyde Street, this creature of Hyde Street. But he's one who refuses to have any souls. He's the only person on Hyde Street that refuses to collect any soul. And that's cool. I like that. And to top it off, the ending is that he's perhaps one of the worst creatures, the most powerful evil creature on Hyde Street. This character, Mr. Oddman, is actually keeping him at bay. He's got him caged away, almost like he's protecting people from from perhaps what could be the most powerful soul collector on Hyde Street. I think that's pretty cool. That amongst these group of eclectic horror collecting soul collectors, that there is this truly heroic character who, while despite maybe looking the most horrific out of all of them, Frankenstein-like, he's perhaps has the most moralistic, strongest moral fiber of them all. And I really like that juxtaposition that Jeff Johns has introduced there. And Ivan Reis's art, he does such a good job of imbuing the character with both horror-like elements, but also visually you can see the pain that he's going through, and the sympathy of the characters, and he's really good at rendering the eyes and showing just how that the tragedy of the character of this odd man character. And I think it's very well done. And I also love Jeff Johns' habit that he probably took from his days at DC, the classic DC Who's Who. At the end, you also have a summary of the matinee monster, as he's been called, and sort of explaining the story and just really spelling it out for people. And again, just the Ghost Machine, as a compliment to Ghost Machine, every issue of Ghost Machine does such a good job of encapsulating the issue at the end, and also giving advertising the other comic books on the line. We also get like the classic comic book ads, but with a Ghost Machine sensibility in the world of Hyde Street. And I think it's just so well done. And it's just every time you get a comic, when we talk about this digitally, and you're showing all the images online here, and it's great. But I think for so many people who read comics digitally, there is something about that physical experience, not just the smell of comics that we like to joke about every now and then. By the way, we should have a smell of the week. Which comic book smells best of the week? We can't do that when we read comics digitally. You can't have your best smell of the week. But in any event, it's really an experience. Ghost Machine has a really well put together comic as well, which is something we don't always talk about because we just read them digitally. But I really like this. This was, there's been a lot of good issues of Hyde Street, but this one, I think this is a character and an issue that I think establishes the heart and soul of Hyde Street, and it did it very well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. You mentioned him not, the one resident of Hyde Street that won't take part. We see this when we see the scoreboard here. And it's interesting because, the story takes place in the 1940s, sort of in the heyday of studio filmmaking. And we see that his score there is 0. We see the Butcher of Hyde Street at 2. You mentioned that this matinee monsters is keeping the Butcher of Hyde Street, who might be the most horrific monster, we're told. A lot of this information is in that Who's Who entry. He has 2 kills, and then when we see it later, he's got 9. So, clearly Oscar Oddman here is keeping the Butcher from getting too out of hand. But it's cool because a lot of the other names here on the list are not names that we saw on the scoreboard previously. The scoreboard being updated basically. So the understanding is a lot of these residents of Hyde Street, they hit their goal of 10,000 and then left. And obviously we know that there's Pranky who doesn't want to leave, and has, I don't, what was it, 30,000, 100,000, something crazy, way more than he needs to leave. But I agree with you, like having this, and it's summed up perfectly. Like what a great way to build out the character from Jeff Johns, from having him be an actor. And we know a lot of actors at that time were taken advantage of by the studio system. His heart's in the right place. Tragic accident, finds himself on Hyde Street. The fact that he played Frankenstein's monster, it is a monster. It's right there in the title, but just the way Mary Shelley wrote it, the way the movies were made, it engendered compassion. You felt bad for the monster. There was a gentleness to the monster as well. So a lot of those sort of traits of Frankenstein's monster are traits that Oscar Oddman has himself. And obviously there's a deep-seated heroism as well. The fact that even despite the scorekeeper, maiming him, you mentioned him being blinded, and the scorekeeper also rips his tongue out. So the monster can't even, Oscar Oddman can't even talk anymore. Now he kind of sounds like a monster because he kind of moans and tries to talk without a tongue. And yet, despite the fact that he could, succumb, he could say, okay, I'm just going to give in. I'm going to go with the flow. If you can't beat him, join him, and get out of here, and leave Hyde Street. I don't know what kind of quote-unquote normal life he might be able to have at this point, with the damage and the injuries that he has, but who knows. But he chooses not to do that. He chooses to stay and do the best he can to help those that he can, even though he's suffering in a way. But it also brings to mind something else that's interesting. The fact that he's been on Hyde Street for 80 years, 70 years, and he's still there. Like, he's not aging. So, I mean, when I read that, I was like, oh, Pranky too, right? Like, he's been there since the 60s, and he's not aging either. So, I don't know. Maybe that's why Pranky doesn't want to leave. He doesn't want to grow up.
It almost reminds me. I think it almost feels like he's like the Superman. He's arguably the strongest. Arguably, we don't know, but I get the sense that he's probably one of the most strongest, and yet he's the one who refuses to sort of give in to the evil that surrounds him and the temptation. So it's very heroic. It feels to me.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know enough about the Butcher to say, but he was able to capture the Butcher, the Butcher of Hyde Street. So yeah, he definitely. Again, just a perfect issue, and what a great balance, right? Like we've talked about this before, how it feels very Twilight Zone, and we get these issues that are focused on this denizen or that denizen or what have you. An incredible job by Jeff Johns and Yvonne Reese of great character work, but character work in a story that advances the overall story, right? Like, this is the story of Oscar Oddman and his tragedy and the choices that he's making, and again, engenders empathy, and you feel bad for him, but you also admire him for his courage and his heroism. But in the midst of telling that story, how much more have we learned about Hyde Street? We see the scorekeeper, we see how brutal the scorekeeper is, we find out about the Butcher of Hyde Street, we see Pranky, who looks like he's maybe about to take on the Matinee monster. There's a lot of other world building going on just within the framework of telling this character's story. So that's not easy to do. And it's one of the things that I really love about Hyde Street, which is just such a fantastic series. I can't believe this is only issue 4.
I know. It feels like we've had more issues. It feels like we have.
It does. I know we had like 2 issues, and I think we had one in October and one in November. Then we didn't have one in December, but then we got the Christmas episode in January, and then we didn't get an issue in February, but this is coming out almost in February. So it's not quite on a monthly schedule, which is okay. I mean, for this quality of art from Yvonne Reese, I'm willing to if it's a 5-week or 6-week schedule, I'm okay with that. But again, like, I can't believe this is only 4 issues, because it feels like I really have an understanding of what Hyde Street is already. So again, credit to Ghost Machine. It's fantastic. I mean, there's a reason that these issues sell out. Almost every issue of Hyde Street I think is sold out. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Everybody, pre-order, pre-order, pre-order. Otherwise, you might end up with second print, which maybe you don't mind that. But if you want a first print, you probably want to be sure to pre-order. All right, up next we have a series that we've covered all the issues of up to this point. This is issue 4 of 5. It's Juvenile. It's written and illustrated by Jesus Oriana. Again, it's not the most original concept. We've talked about it before. It's this idea that in the future there's some virus that supposedly kills people when they reach adolescence. And so they're drugging all their kids and keeping them in these. They're almost like these boarding schools, but with a lot more security. Supposedly all the security and the lockdown are for their own protection. So they're medicated every day in order to keep that virus at bay. So they're told. Come to find out, they have abilities, psychic abilities, telepathy, telekinesis, being able to move things with your mind, being able to read each other's thoughts and what have you. And they only find that out through a boy who got kicked out of another school and is sent to sort of the most strict, I guess you'd say, of all these schools, all these facilities. And he's not taking the drugs, and he sort of recruits this girl that he has a crush on. She stops taking it. They start talking to each other, or reading each other's thoughts and what have you. And then he gets captured, and there's some surgery performed on him, and whether or not he still has powers remains to be seen. But she takes it upon herself to tell all the other kids, hey, stop taking it. And they don't believe her, but she's just like, just don't take it. Just skip one dose of the medicine. And some of them are reluctant, because, again, this medicine's supposed to be saving their lives. But they do. They all skip it, and now they all have these powers. And they sort of, you get it because they're, 14, 15-year-old kids. They're not, like, the most responsible, and the most logical, and the most reasoning. So they drug the guard that's supposed to be, monitoring them on the video cameras, and they start practicing with their powers in the anticipation of them escaping at some point. But, of course, they don't do it secretively enough, and the powers that be find out that they're have these abilities, and they basically attack them, and remains to be seen in issue 5 how it's all going to resolve itself. So again, these are some sci-fi tropes, young kids with powers, don't know how they got them, don't exactly know how to control them, kind of this authoritarian type adult hierarchy that's trying to keep them down or what have you. The art by far is what's the best for me in this series by Jesus Oriana. I think if he'd wanted to have, he's a filmmaker, he's a storyteller, but if he'd wanted to have a career just as a comic artist, I think that he could have done that. It's not like the most sophisticated or the most dynamic layouts on the page, but this guy's not doing this full time. He's doing it full time. I'm confident that he's talented enough that he could have been a really great comic artist. And I talked about this last time as well. Where it does fall down just a little bit is in the pacing. It seems pretty clear to me that he's hoping to turn this into a feature film or a television series, Netflix series, something like that. And this is sort of proof of concept. And it's not that it's bad. It's just it feels a little rushed in terms of pacing. And again, he hasn't done a ton of comic work, and pacing is the hardest thing to get right when you're a comic book writer. And it's interesting too because he's drawing it, so I would think that would help a little bit with the pacing. But again, it's really challenging. So it's super entertaining, and I am really enjoying it. And I say all those criticisms just to interest of full disclosure. And you can take it all with a grain of salt. I would recommend you picking up and reading this because I think it is interesting enough, even though these are some ideas that we've seen in other places. And just based on the strength alone, I think it's worth reading. But, is it a perfect comic? No, it's not going to stand up to what I was just talking about with Hyde Street, how, that is a veteran comic writer. Jeff Jones has written hundreds of comics, and he's honed the craft. Jesus hasn't, but I think the talent's there, and if he wanted to be a full-time comic writer, I think he could do that as well. So, I don't want anybody to pick this up and then read it and be like, well, that wasn't as good as it could be. No, there's a lot of potential, and I would love to see this fleshed out, longer than 5 issues. I think if it was like 12 issues, uh, and he got some help of like a maybe a senior, an experienced comic book editor or a co-writer that's written a lot of books. This could really be something special. He wanted to do it himself. Hey, that's admirable as well. So I think it is worth your time. Um, Curious to see how it's all going to wrap up. 100%, I'm in for the final issue. And again, the art is just gorgeous. Really fantastic job on the art. So, what do you think of the penultimate issue here, Rocky?
I thought it was excellent. This is really the central characters are Sarah and Max. Max being the kid that ends up at this sort of juvenile prison, for lack of a better term, and ultimately he has last issue he did have an operation because they discovered he was using his powers, and they sort of, it looks like it appears at the beginning of this issue, half of this book, he's lost his powers, and then he slowly gains it back as the events in the issue progress. But what works so well here is this entire issue. There are Jesus Ariana does such a great job here with the art. What really stands out is, through when all of the juveniles, all of the kids are in their portion of this prison, there's a dark green background, but it's dark green detailed backgrounds. And the use of color is masterful. Not only the use of color, but the angles and the overhead shots, side shots of these kids. And we're getting all of them very well done. These are mischievous kids. These are kids that you get a feel that these are young teenagers. They act that way, they talk that way. I love that there's not too much dialogue that clutters up the page. It's just really, you get a sense that these are kids that are they're actually having fun despite their circumstances. They're acting up. My favorite series of pages is near the end, where there's a lot of the background. It's in a very beige, like a light brown color, but the way that Oriana focuses the attention of the reader with the bright colors, with the clothing on the kids themselves, and you can see which kid is the focus of the framing, and it really helps tell the story, and it really. Your eye is drawn exactly what Oriana wants your eye to be drawn to, and it really works well. You mentioned the pacing. I've got less of an issue with the pacing with it than you do. I think this is fast paced, and I think it's meant to be that way. I also appreciate it, and I'm very forgiving of it because I really like these characters. I particularly love Sarah, and I love the fact that Max you could tell Sarah likes Max. Max likes Sarah. Max is a little embarrassed about the fact that for a period of time, he's the only one whose thoughts his thoughts can be read by everyone else, but he can't read theirs. I love even the lettering, the way there's a rainbow of lettering representing the various different thoughts of all the kids now that are slowly developing their powers. In many ways, this is something where you mentioned that maybe the writer is doing this for a movie. In many ways, this is a story that perhaps works better as a comic book because of the nature of the plot itself and the use of mind reading and telepathy and the powers as they're expressing themselves, because Oriana does a masterful job sort of conveying that in the page. This was very well done. I also love the covers. Each cover has a different kid on the cover. I thought that was really great. This is it was a really good issue. I think artistically it's the best one so far, and things are really ramping up. So I'm really looking forward to how this thing is ultimately resolved.
Yeah, I'm going to be kind of sad to see it come to an end. I'm going to be curious to see how it sells in trade as well, because that may dictate whether or not we get any more. So we'll have to wait and see. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Up next, we have. Oh yeah, Knights versus Samurai. David Dastmalchian handles the writing duties. It's interesting. When I pulled the cover, I didn't realize that wasn't the main cover. So you'll be able to see the main cover here in a second. But I do that variant cover is fantastic as well. But anyway, yeah, written by David Dastmalchian, as I said. Fede Melee handles the art. Colors by Ulysses Areola. Letters by Underworld Design. We get a little bit here in the beginning of the kind of the con man, if you will, that works for the king, that sort of set this up so he could go and steal the dragon gold while the knights fought the samurai, things felt exactly as he sort of expected them to. Um, but what he wasn't counting on was that later in the story, the knights and the samurai are finally able to start communicating with each other and working together. And not only do they start communicating with each other, but they're able to start communicating with the dragon. And they find out that not all is as it seems. And they find out that there's manipulation going on. Now, do they know it's the king's messenger or what have you that is behind it all? Not necessarily at this point, but they do realize that they're going to need to team up to figure out what's going on. Because the dragon doesn't necessarily want to be killing them, but he's like, hey, somebody's come in here and stole my gold. That's not what they call it. Shank is what they call it. And he's like, and it certainly seems like you all were trying to distract me so somebody could come in and steal it. And this is news to the knights and the samurai. They've been kind of busy fighting each other and then fighting the dragon off when it attacked. So these samurai are under orders from their emperor to kill this dragon. And when they return to their village, their little fort here, the king's general is there. And I know he's probably not called a general or whatever, but this
Yeah.
messenger from the king, this very accomplished and powerful, politically powerful samurai, and he basically condemns them, says you're all going to die because you didn't follow the orders of your emperor. And the leader of the samurai is trying to tell him, hey, things aren't what they seem. Somebody seems to be manipulating things. This guy doesn't really want to hear it. So luckily, with the help of the knights, the samurai are able to escape. And now it's sort of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, I guess, with the dragon on one side, and then the knights and the samurai on the other side. I guess they'd be Ronin now because they're masterless samurai without a master.
Yeah,
Technically,
that's
they'd be
right. Yeah.
Ronin.
Yeah.
And then you have the samurai army of the king that's still loyal to or the emperor that's still loyal to the emperor. So that army is headed its way as well. And so these knights and samurai are going to have to figure out how to work together, and how to possibly convince the dragon to fight alongside them, to figure out who stole the shank and what's going on. So this was a twist I did not expect to see coming at all in any way, shape, or form. So this story is sort of getting more complicated in a way and more fun than just, hey, here's some formidable warriors of two different continents, from two different cultures who are fighting because they have no way to communicate and each thinks the other is bad, and it turns out not. So it was a big moment in this issue when one of the one of the magicians here, or whatever you call them, was able to create a spell that allowed them to talk to each other and allowed them to talk to the dragon. So this is not what I expected. Like, the strength of the series for me so far was just seeing the cool art and seeing the dragon and the renderings of the knights and the renderings of the samurai and watching them fight. And it was sort of there wasn't depth of story. It was entertaining, kind of like watching a big giant battle in a movie or something like that. And it's entertaining visually. It's like eye candy. But
Yeah.
maybe the depth of story is not there to really pull you in. I'm pulled in after this issue. I'm pulled in. Like, this is the best issue of the series so far, without question. I loved it. So, what were your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, it's funny. Every time we reviewed an issue of Knights v Samurai, my comment, I always seem to go back to make a comment about how I really like the lettering. I found it very effective how we could. It was clear they were speaking in another language because we would see the samurai script, or the I guess Japanese script, and then below it the translation in English. But at the same time, just as it was interesting to see because it highlighted the language barrier between these two warrior cultures. But at the same time, it was a little bit irritating for me to see it, but in a good way, because I felt the frustration of the various characters as they struggled for the last 5 issues up into the 6th issue to understand each other. And a lot of the problems with that the characters were having could have been so easily solved if only they could communicate. And it was like, oh my God. So when you're right that it was a surprisingly fantastic moment when suddenly they could communicate. And it came at a pivotal time just when they needed it to come and arrive at. And so, in a sense, through a combination of luck and skill and a little bit, of course, magic and sorcery, things. Good things are happening. The plot's moving forward in a very Game of Thrones like fashion. The only difference is in this one, the dragon actually talks, and this is only what appears to be the opening tale of what's going to be a much larger narrative. The impression that I get, and I really like it. And again, kudos to the letterer. I don't know. Sorry, I don't have the credits here.
Underworld design.
Underworld design, excellent job. Particularly, I really felt the different voice. I'm imagining in my mind, in my own headcanon, the voice of the dragon. I love the bright yellow lettering with the black background for the dragon. I think it really works well. And overall, this was definitely a series where the lettering itself really, really hammered, emphasized and drew me into the narrative in a way that I never appreciated as much. I did appreciate it at the beginning, but with this issue, when suddenly all these characters understand each other and we're back to the sort of the standard lettering, it's like suddenly the story's like, oh, I feel relief. Oh my God, now we can really get forward because now the bad guys are really going to get it. Whoever this master, evil king is, or all the machinations, it's really going to come into play because now that all the players understand each other, it really underscores the importance of just how communication is, how poor communication between cultures, how devastating it can be. And I really appreciated that. And I wouldn't have been able to do that had they not had that. David Dastmalchian, kudos to him for, I think he did something a little unique here. He didn't insult the readers. He didn't immediately have a translation in the first or second issue. He had the patience to let the story grow and, right into the sixth issue. And as opposed to, I think a lot of writers wouldn't have the patience to let the story sort of flow from that, particularly with respect to having these two cultures not understand each other. So kudos to him. And, again, I'm enjoying his Creature Commandos, and this one I might be enjoying just a little bit more. So I like it.
Yeah, for those that don't know, David Dastmalchian, he writes comics, but his kind of primary profession, I guess you'd say, is actor. He's been in some James Gunn films. He's been in some horror films, what have you. He's definitely a giant comic book fan. And there's YouTube videos you can watch where various comic book websites go to his house and he gives them a tour and what have you. But one other thing that I want to point out, we're giving David a lot of credit, and rightfully so, along with Underworld design and the colors by Ulysses Ariola and the incredible art by Fede Mele. But credit to Todd McFarlane over at McFarlane Productions and editor-in-chief over there at Todd McFarlane Productions, Thomas Healy. This is a McFarlane book. Now, it doesn't say Spawn anywhere on the title because obviously it doesn't have anything to do with Spawn. And for the most part, the books that they put out are in the Spawn universe, but they do once in a while put out some other titles as well. And I don't know how David got hooked up with Todd and Thomas, but Todd is not an unintelligent person. He's a very smart individual, very intelligent individual, and he definitely recognized David's talent and knew there was something to this story. And Thomas is doing a fantastic job editing it well. So yeah, really, really enjoying it. If you haven't heard about it, yeah, definitely give it a try. I think you can jump on with this issue. Definitely go back and pick up the others if you can. But if you're not able to, I think you could jump on this issue and kind of pick up what's going on. So, speaking of McFarlane Productions, next up we have Sam and Twitch. We're up to issue number 11. It's written, I should say the plot is from Todd McFarlane. Script is by Jordan Barrell and Todd McFarlane. Art by Thomas Nalchek with thanks to Magnus Arts. Colors by FCO Placencia. The color flats are by Sheila Saldana. And then the letters by Tom Orzechowski. So, good issue. Give us your thoughts on it, Rocky.
This is a crime noir tale. It's Sam and Twitch. They're detectives. I've said before, I don't know a heck of a lot about Sam and Twitch, quite frankly, and I don't need to. And that's thanks to the great scripting of Jordan Barrell and Todd McFarlane. I I feel like I know Sam and Twitch. Uh, and this is one where basically we have like the larger set Sam, and Twitch is like really good marksman. Twitch is being investigating for he shot, and he was he shot at a suspect at a crime scene, and he usually never misses, and he did, and he ended up believing to have killed this suspect. But then, strangely enough, an autopsy revealed that this character that he shot, this suspect that he shot, what it was apparently dead a couple of days before, which is of course impossible. How is that possible? Well, the investigation continues. So you have an internal affairs investigation, and what you have an internal affairs investigation. You've got Twitch going home with his wife, because he's actually a good husband. He's a good family man. He's got a kid. So between navigating his life, his stressful life as a detective, and dealing with the fact that he may have killed somebody, dealing with the fact that he killed somebody that was apparently already dead, dealing with he's got sort of a I get the feeling, and maybe I'm wrong. I haven't been reading Sam and Twitch very much, but I get the feeling that he's kind of got a little bit of a dysfunctional partner relationship with Sam, but they stand up for each other and they support each other. And Sam doesn't want anything. Sam is willing to do whatever he has to make Twitch is protected, and he's not screwed over by the investigation. And Sam does his own investigation in this issue, and discovers that there are other forces at play here, and in particular, it might very well be. He's found some information and some clues leading to the drug that this suspect that was killed, that it was the drugs in the system that may have killed the person, and that almost like a zombie drug, I guess, giving you the illusion, seemingly the appearance of death, but yet not being dead. And very well done. The art here is just truly fantastic. And I got to say, not only is the art really good, but I actually love the lettering, because the lettering is something they've dispensed with the word balloons. They've gotten rid of the word balloons, and instead of the word balloons, you just have these little lines with these sort of like typed words, and it heightens the idea of it as being more of a police serial, and it allows the pictures and the just the beautiful art to shine through. And it actually, it's something that I could probably get used to with more than one title. I'm almost surprised that this particular lettering approach isn't done more in other comics, because I don't see it very often. But in any event, this is a really good. It's a great crime tale. It's not over yet. The plot thickens this issue. It's a really great read. And I understand you've caught up on it, you said?
Well, I've read the last three, and yeah, I echo what you said. I mean, the Sam and Twitch relationship has, dysfunctional at times. Twitch being a little bit more, obviously he's an expert marksman, he's a little more cerebral, a little more careful. Sam being more impulsive and sort of flies by the seat of his pants, but still a talented investigator, has learned to trust his gut over the years. But yeah, what they're doing here, I mean, you don't need to know anything about Spawn to pick this up and read it. It definitely reads as a police procedural, as crime noir, as Rocky said. So I agree with you on the art. It is so awesome, so detailed. I love the word balloons as choice as well. I think that's always been something they've done in Sam and Twitch. It's photorealistic art. So, if that's not your thing, it might be an art style that you don't particularly enjoy, but I love it. I think it works really well. And you want to talk about a book that feels easily adaptable to live action. This certainly would work. I especially love seeing Sam out there investigating in his ham-fisted kind of way, kind of over the top, and doesn't take crap from anybody, and just kind of lays it all out, very blunt. Fantastic. Fantastic issue, fantastic series from Todd and company over there at McFarlane Productions. All right, on to the last book we're going to talk about. It is Tin Can Society from Giant Generator, which is Rick Remender's imprint over at Image. This particular story is by Peter Warren and Rick Remender, with the scripting done by Peter Warren, art by Francesco Mobili, colors by Chris Shuckry, letters by Jackie Marzon. The series is so good. It is so good. We had the cliffhanger last issue where we see the Caliburn armor had a baby inside it. I speculated that the baby was either the offspring of the main character, the one that created the armor, Johnny, who was the one that sort of was the central figure of getting the Tin Can Society together in a lot of ways. And the name, if you haven't been listening to us talk about this, it comes from the fact that they all met in junior high, and they had this can that they buried near a tree that had all kinds of things in there that they want to hide from their parents, candy and cigarettes and, all kinds of other stuff. And they would gather there after school and dig up the can and enjoy, whatever was in there that they probably weren't supposed to be having. And that's where the name came from. But it also has another meaning because Johnny eventually, with his genius, he has a disability. It never comes right out and says it's MS, but it could be MS or some other sort of disability where he has to wear braces on his legs and he has to use these sort of canes on his hands to walk. But he eventually, with his genius, creates some armor. Well, first of all, he creates sort of these braces, these automatic braces or technological braces that go on his legs that help him walk and then run, and then expands that out into a whole armor, becomes a superhero. We get some of that more fleshed out here in this particular issue. But in the series starts in the first issue with him having been killed in his Caliburn identity, and so. Yeah, the cliffhanger last issue when the rest of the remaining Tin Can Society are trying to figure out what's going on and why Johnny was killed, we find out that there's a baby in the armor, a little African American baby. So could it be a clone of Johnny? Could it be Johnny's son? Well, we get the answer to that in this issue when we find out. Yeah, it is Johnny's son, because what Johnny did. So there was a point in time where they were going to mass produce the armor and sell it to a bunch of militaries around the world. But during the testing phase, what happened was there was a bit of a massacre and created a situation where Johnny changed his mind about wanting the armor to be out there to be used in such a way, and he changed the armor so that it would only work if the armor were worn. It would tap into his spine and like test his spinal fluid. And then he was the only one that could wear it. So that was the way, his fail-safe to prevent the rest of his sort of, I don't want to say warmongering, but maybe greedy board of directors that cared more about bottom line than human life, more about financial gain. And so he didn't trust them, and so he put this fail-safe in the armor. Well, they went to Johnny's wife, who used to be an actress, and they had some dirt on her that she didn't want the whole world to know, and they convinced her to give them some of Johnny's how can I say this, some of Johnny's fluid from their intimate time, and they used that to grow this baby, to impregnate the sister of the man that Johnny inadvertently killed. And we also find out in this issue that Johnny had been sending her money on a monthly basis out of guilt. And so the board, found this out, and they investigated. They figured Johnny likely killed this guy. So they tell this woman that, and say, hey, here's how you can help us, get revenge. We're going to impregnate you with, Johnny's fluid and what have you. And so then they take that baby, and then they don't need Johnny anymore, right? Because the baby's got Johnny's DNA. So they can put the baby, and this is like, man, is this evil, right? Put the baby in the armor, like keep the baby sedated in the armor. You're still putting a little tiny innocent child in harm's way. Yeah. But they can basically remote pilot the Caliburn armor.
Well, and with and into the baby's spinal column too.
Yeah.
Utilizing the spinal tissue is horrible, horrifying.
Yeah, awful. And not only that, in that supposed remote capacity, they, have the Caliburn armor kill Johnny. This baby, again, completely unknowing, unconscious, not aware, whatever, but kills his own father. And so again, it just, horrific. And this is what the Tin Can Society is finding out in this issue. And as they find it out, they start putting all the pieces together. They're attacked by the board of directors, mercenaries here, by their military soldiers and mercenaries and what have you. And during the battle, they manage to keep the baby safe. And just when it seems like the mother's completely lost it, the not the actual birth mother, but Johnny's wife, has completely lost it and said, she's going to kill the baby so that nobody will be able to use the armor and it's better off for everybody, what have you. And just as she's about to shoot the baby, there's an electric shock that knocks out all of the soldiers that were sent to attack them. And we see somebody in the Caliburn armor, but we're like, wait, how can there be anybody in the Caliburn armor? It only works with Johnny's spinal fluid, and they're holding the baby right there, so it's not the baby in the armor. And then we see the helmet come off the armor, and it's Johnny. It's Johnny. He's not dead. So I wasn't exactly right, but maybe I was. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Like, what the hell did... So now my speculation is Johnny knew this was coming and set the board up, and it wasn't really him that got killed, or he did manage to clone himself or what have you. But, man, we got a cliffhanger ending with the baby in the armor last issue, and this cliffhanger ending is we see Johnny in the armor, and we're like, wait, what? And I love that the previous page where Caliburn, he comes in, it's a fantastic double page spread here. We can't fit it all on the screen, but yeah, he shocks everybody, including his own wife. He flies in, he takes his helmet off, and there's no dialogue. I love that there's no dialogue. We just get the reaction of his friends with their surprised look on their faces and the baby's look of, oh, look, it's daddy. But no dialogue, no dialogue at all, which helps it land even more. No dialogue on the final page either, with Johnny looking at him like, yeah, it's me. This was a holy shit moment. Definitely going to be in my consideration for my best moments at the end of the year with the Comic Source Awards, because I just thought it was fantastic. This series, Tin Can Society, continues to be just top notch. The character work, the twists, the turns, the pacing. This is what great comics are. This is like epitomizes them. I loved it. So, I was giving Rocky a bad time. He was a little behind on his reading. He hadn't read it yet. And I was like, dude, did you read Tin Can Society? He's like, oh, not yet. I'm like, you gotta read this thing because it was absolutely amazing. So, yeah, you've had a chance to read it. What'd you think?
Well, this is one of those endings where it really works well. I mean, the best types of cliffhangers like this one, the best cliffhangers are the ones that sit with you, and the more you reflect on them, the more they slowly blow you away. It's like, explosions are instantaneous and they hit you hard. This is like a slow explosion. When I think of the ramifications of what this final scene means, did Johnny do this deliberately to his own child? Did he know what was happening to his child? Is this something that Johnny set up? If Johnny's aware of this, or if he's behind this, it still says something pretty dark about Johnny that he would do this with his own son. If this is Johnny, then whose body was it that they discovered? Maybe this is, if he did this to his son, maybe the body they discovered was a clone of his. I got all these questions and I'm reviewing the entire comic book that we've read so far in my head. And what I like as well is the misdirection. One of the, we've given this series high compliments from the beginning. And one of them is that we got to know all the individual members of the Tin Can Society, because with each individual issue, we learned something about the flaws and the idiosyncrasies of the various characters and how all of them, each of them, could potentially have a motive to kill Caliburn, to kill Johnny Moore, who is the head and created Moore Industries, or a company called More Progress. And you got the corrupt CEO, Sharon Wagner, who basically on the surface must be orchestrating or manipulating, perhaps we believe being the one that wanted to take Johnny Moore out and did so, but he's still alive. So what's going on here? Is Johnny Moore maybe a bad guy? Could he be like a darker Could you know we use the example of him being maybe a Tony Stark at the beginning of this series, who a Tony Stark who died and he was a good person and somebody's murdered him. Well, maybe he's a darker Tony Stark. Is he more of a Doctor Doom in way? I don't know. But it all this from a cliffhanger. And it really is landed. And so now we got 30 days to let all this stuff percolate. And I'm not going to have to reread this issue in 30 days because I'm going to remember it.
Oh
And
yeah.
so kudos to Peter Warren, with help by Rick Remender. This was very well scripted. The art is absolutely fantastic. You nailed it. Well, you talked about it. To get rid of all the dialogue, let the pictures speak for themselves. The fantastic art, and I particularly enjoyed. You mentioned it, that the young child recognizing Daddy, the little smirk on the kid's face. I think that was hilarious. I know Daddy's home, but yeah, very well done. Very well done. No question.
Yeah, again, one of those series that shows us what's possible in comics, and yeah, I mean, this isn't one where like with DC, sometimes we get to read ahead and what have you because they're available in our press kit, and Image we get them once a week, and I go, yeah, I mean, total first world problem or whatever, but I really I want to know, I want the next issue of this so badly, so I can know, you know, what's going on, how did Johnny survive? You talked about it. Yeah, and anxiously anticipating when that next one drops. No doubt it's going to be at the top of my list of things to read. So, all right, let me give a rundown on some other books. It's not a huge indie week, but some other books you might want to be on the lookout for. Walking Dead Deluxe is up to issue number 108. I've ranted about this company in the past, but I'm going to put it out there because I know these are some beloved properties. So these are all from Dynamite. We have Space Ghost number 10. Thundercats is up to issue 13. And The Terminator from Declan Shelvey has its 5th issue come out this week. Over at Dark Horse, Arcbound is up to issue number 4. So that is available as well. And then a cartoon I used to love when I was a kid, The Herculoids, has its debut issue at Dynamite this week as well. Over at Distillery, The Missionary, which is written by Ryan Stegman, who's more known for his art than he is his writing, but he's writing a horror story over there. I haven't read either of the issues, so I can't speak to the quality, but I did want to mention it. And then Wind, which is a James Tynion property, which is back for, I think, its 3rd volume. It's called Wind, The Power of the Blood. That has its 3rd issue that drops this week as well. So those are some of the other books that are out this week that you might want to be on the lookout for. Time for book of the week, Rocky. I sort of, in a way, feel like it's an easy choice. I mean, easy choice for me. So
Yeah,
I'll let you
it
go
is.
first.
Yeah, well, I know what you're going to pick. I'm quite certain, and I think I'm going to pick the same thing. But I will give a shout out to 3rd place for me was Juvenile. I thought Jesus Ariana did a fantastic job with Juvenile. I just love the art, the color work, the scenes. They're just very well done. I'm excited for the story. I thought I quite enjoyed it. Hyde Street was really good. I'd put it 2nd place with the Mr. Oddman there, and the sort of this tragic Frankenstein-like character who refuses to capture souls and take souls on the despite the horrors on Hyde Street. Just so well done. Jeff Johns, Ivan Reis, fantastic on the art. But yeah, I got to go with what we just finished reviewing, Tin Can Society. It's just too epic. I mean, everything paid off here. I mean, everything was leading to this cliffhanger, and in many ways, despite the tropiness of the cliffhanger, and I say it's tropey in that it's not the first time that you think somebody's dead, and then suddenly later they're not dead. But and so to be able to pull that off and make it feel still surprising, that's hard to do. I don't think that's easy to do. Not every writer can pull that off. But this actually feels like a genuine surprise. And just so well done. So yeah, Tin Can Society is my pick. And by the way, I got to give a shout out to the letters page is called The Can in the Tin Can Society. I think that's awesome, calling it The Can. Anyways, but yeah, Tin Can Society.
Yeah, the can, you can read it on the can.
Yeah.
You know, and here you talk about the cliffhanger, what a fantastic job they did with it. I mean, you're right; it's not the first time, but almost the fact that it was back to back cliffhangers. You know, I mean, they've ended
Yeah.
each issue with somewhat of a cliffhanger, but you know, ended it with the baby there. They were, you know, right away, especially being an African American baby, like, oh, uh, it's got to be Johnny's son. Um, and so that makes sense that it would be his son and why it would. And so then you kind of get the we feel like we got the explanation. Okay, now we know who was in the armor. We understand why it works or whatever. So it's like, okay, we had the cliffhanger, and then we had the answer to the cliffhanger of you know who the baby was and why it made sense or whatever. And then and so we think that's the end. That's the end of it. Okay, so we got the answer. Now we just have to figure out, you know, who needs to pay, who needs to be brought to justice for you know, basically manipulating events, for killing Johnny, and for using his little baby, his offspring, this way. Uh, but that's not the case. There's more to the story when we get sort of the second half of the cliffhanger, when you know the Caliburn armor shows up with Johnny Morton. Because again, it's like we thought there was only one. You know, all the rest that were built are red and they look different and they're autonomous. They're, you know, remote controlled. But yeah, Johnny clearly, I don't think he had anything to do with the baby per se, but I think he knew what was coming. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I got to pick it as my book of the week as well.
And I just want to I want to add that there's still 3 issues left. That's what I
Yeah,
like. You know, because
yeah,
often when you get to this sort of cliffhanger, there's usually everything's so conveniently resolved in the last issue. I like that there's 3 issues left because I'm wondering to myself, there's a lot more substance left to this story, is what I'm feeling. So
yeah. If I had to guess, probably issue 7 is going to be kind of almost like a debrief. You know, like all
yeah,
the rest of the Tin Can Society is going to be like, Johnny, what the hell? How's it go? You know, they're going to
yeah.
and then you know they'll probably come up with a plan on how they're going to, you know, take more industries back or more progress back, and then you know we'll have the big climax, and I'm sure issue 8 will end with one heck of a cliffhanger, and then we'll get it all resolved in issue 9. So yeah,
Mhm.
very much looking forward to um, the wrap up of that. Much like yourself, I'll give an honorable mention to Hyde Street. After I read Hyde Street, I was like, oh, this is going to be my book of the week for sure, because I read it before I read Tin Can Society. You mentioned Juvenile as your third, you know, worthy choice as well. I'll throw my third to Knights versus Samurai, only because of how surprising it was for me.
Yeah,
Like I said, I've really been enjoying the
it
series,
was
but
really good
more
too.
but more as like the visuals of it. You know, just like I said,
Mm.
not necessarily depth of story, but just this really cool action thing I didn't have to think about too much. And now all of a sudden, David Dastmalchian's thrown some stakes and some you know, big twist in there. So fantastic. But yeah, Tin Can Society for both of us couldn't have gone down any other way. So we do recommend you picking it up. A lot of those books that Giant Generator is doing over at Image, Rick Remender, are fantastic. We've been enjoying Dust to Dust. We've been enjoying God, why am I Seasons, the one that
Yeah.
Rick Remender himself is doing with Paul Azaceta, and then Grommets. Grommets has been fantastic as well. Um, just yeah, some great stuff from Remender over there at Image. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We appreciate you joining. Don't forget to head over to Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom ! On YouTube. That's where you can see the DC Spotlight every week. Talked about all 10 books that came out this week, gave our recommendations and what have you. You can also listen to all the content, both the DC Spotlight as well as all the Comic Source content, audio only. If that's your preference, just go to your favorite app or podcasting platform, do a search for the Comic Source, and subscribe. Gives you access to thousands and thousands of past episodes. Don't forget, whether you're checking us out on YouTube or this channel on the audio only, Rocky's channel, we appreciate, you know, all the likes and all the subscriptions and all that, because it really helps us expand our reach. So don't forget, like, comment, subscribe to both the channels when you're there. Ring that notification bell so you know when new content is coming out. Don't forget WonderCon coming up at the end of the month. Hope to see you there. If you're going to be there, reach out, let me know. I think I still have a few Comic Source lanyards. Be happy to hook you up with one if you are so inclined. So that's going to do it. As I said, we appreciate you joining as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.